I've got very little time to work on this competition. It's Native Instruments, 25 years of Native Instruments. I have to use at least one instance of 25, which is this contact instrument. Okay, reading some of the fine print. Can be any style or genre. Tell us what presets you've used. So that's it. That's the basics. Let's get started. I'm going to start out with a more straightforward kind of Rompler styled patch. That's a good starting point. Yep, something on the B layer. All right, like that. And both up. I think I can work with that. For this one, I'm going to see what I can do with the wavetable stuff. I'll start with that. Okay, I like that as a basic tone. Let's add a B layer. Let's go with that. See how they sound together. Let's add some filter and modulation. Monophonic for this one. Also going to fatten it up with some tuning modulation. I think that'll work. I've created a couple more patches. I've chosen the stock preset patch that I'm going to use along with everything else. And now I'm going to start on the synth drums. I'm going to use Progtronic for all the synth drums, and I'm going to start with the kick drum. I'm going to add one more longer kick along with that. I'm going to move on to the snares. I'm going to add a longer snare. Those complement each other pretty well. Let's move on to the hi-hat. I'm going to copy the closed hat over to mid and open. Work on the mid. Okay, now on to the open hat. I'm going to tweak the mid hat again. Try to get it to match up better with the open. And back to the close to try to make that match up better with the mid and open. I'm going to move on to the toms. All right, I'm going to copy this one over to all the remaining toms. Yeah, tune them. Right, back to the hi-hats for a sec. Extend the close to the mid. Not really liking the mid. Yeah, I'll just lengthen this. Now the open just sounds out of place. Copy the mid over to open and lengthen it. Sounds way better. I'm going to move over to the crash cymbals, or just cymbals in general. Start with a couple of crashes, and then I'll do a couple of rides. Do that over and make a lower pitch version of it. Move on to the ride cymbals. Copy that over, make a lower version of that as well. Right, I think that'll do it for the drums. Now I'll move on to the acoustic drums. I'm going to be using Superior Drummer for the acoustic drums. I'm just going to quickly go through and choose all the drum instruments that I want to use for this particular track. Okay, that'll work for acoustic drums. Now I'm going to move on to the bass guitar. Bass guitar, I'm going to be using Moto Bass. I'm just going to go through all the bits and pieces and construct a bass from the ground up. I'm going to use an external amp and cab, so I'm just going to turn all this stuff off. Okay, that'll do it for the bass guitar. Now I'm going to move on to the electric guitars. The electric guitars are where I usually start the actual mixing process. It's the first thing that usually I have to start worrying about in terms of effects, rooting through the board, buses, and even the master. I actually like to run with most of the mastering kind of in place, so I'll mix with that. It kind of helps determine how I want to mix each instrument based on how it's going to sound mastered. Okay, with that bit of info out of the way, I'm going to start working on the guitars. For this track, I'm going to be using Shreddage 3. I'm going to be using Serpent and Jupiter. I load them in together, and then I split them to 2 different tracks. And I'm going to affect each track independently. I'll start with Serpent first, so I'll go ahead and mute the Jupiter. And I'm going to be using Amplitude 5 for both of these guitars. It'll be 1 instance each of Amplitude for each guitar. Now I'm just going to start going through and basically crafting the guitar tone. I'm definitely going to be going for metal tones, so I'm going to be using probably high gain amps, or I could use clean amps and I could use pedals to generate the distortion. Maybe I'll do one of each. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with a clean amp and then I'll pedal it up for the distortion. Let's try the Silver 12. I'm going to start with the metal distortion pedal, and I'm going to put it in the effects loop of this amp. I'm going to drive it a little with this OCD pedal. Okay, that's a start. I'll try some different cabinets, probably some 4x12s. I'm going to go with the Mesa Recto. It's helping to kind of cover up the quacky mids. Now let's see what we can do with the microphones. Yeah, move on to the second mic. See how those sound together. Moving on to the second guitar. Let's try the Engel Powerball. I think I can live with that. Let's see what they both sound like together. Need to even out the volume. Sounds more evened out. Start working on my guitar's pre-bus bus. Start with some console emulation. Add some EQ and some extreme metal guitar styled separation. First, the kind of classic Pultec metal guitar EQ. Have some separation. I'm going to change both guitars to amp closets. Really tightens it up. I'm going to throw a brick wall limiter right at the end of the chain there. 6 dB is a little overkill. I think what I'm going to do is go 3 dB. Then I'm going to copy 2 of these over to each guitar, also at 3 dB. Really kind of evens everything out. And with that, I'd say the guitars are basically done. Now to move on through the rest of the mix. That covers basic sound design and introduction to how I mix. In part 2, I'll continue tweaking the rest of the instruments in the mix, then begin the composition and production process.